The story of Valentina is that of a traveler who has looked long and hard for her place in the world. A young woman who searched everywhere for a country which she could finally call her own. But it was at that moment that her journey came to a halt. Thus began a new one, different from those of the past. A journey across illness and hospitals. A journey in search of a cure. I'm Giulia Bassetto, and this is the second season of The Science of You, a journey to discover the frontiers and benefits of personalized medicine. The Science of You is a podcast series by Cora Media in collaboration with the European Partnership for Personalized Medicine and coordinated by Fondazione Toscana Life Sciences and co-funded by the European Union's Horizon Europe Framework Programme for Research and Innovation. In this episode, I will talk about CAR T-cell therapy, a personalized therapy that involves reprogramming certain cells of the immune systems, the lymphocytes, to train them to recognize and attack specific target cells. And in describing this therapy, we shall tell the story of Valentina. Valentina is a woman from the northeast of Italy who has been living in Barcelona for about 20 years. This is a choice she made during a period of her life in which she was searching for a place where she could finally settle down and truly feel at home. Valentina is a determined and passionate traveler. She has been to many places, moving around for long stretches of time, and has reinvented herself over and over many times. At a certain point, she decides to go even further to see if there is somewhere else that resonates with her, which is why she embarks on a trip to Brazil.
I left to spend a month there at most, and I ended up changing my return trip twice, staying for 3 months. Every time I got off at Salvador de Bahia airport. Above all, there was the smell of the air. It was unmistakable. And every time I got off the plane, I felt at home. It's one of the most powerful regions in the country because they are Africans. I mean, it's not like southern Brazil where they are practically German Europeans. It's the most intense area of Brazil. But probably this feeling of freedom, nature, and cheerfulness, which I was missing a little, made that place my new home.
That place will become her new home. Once the decision is made, she has to return to Europe to formalize her choice and organize the move. After all, most of her life is still in Barcelona. Her everyday objects, her clothes, her belongings. She also needs to say goodbye to her loved ones and put her affairs in order.
Except that a couple of days before my return, I started to feel ill, and I started to have a fever. My glands started to swell, which had never happened to me before, but I didn't worry too much about it, although the return journey was quite tough. It was a day-and-a-half trip. During those hours, things started to get worse. But anyway, I said I'd go back to Europe and go to the hospital, and that's what I did.
At first, she thinks it's dengue fever or another infection contracted during the trip. Something typical of a tropical areas and still unknown to her. And so she goes to the tropical diseases department at the hospital in Barcelona. But the doctors are unable to provide a diagnosis, and Valentina starts to feel better. It takes a while. Valentina needs a couple of months to recover. And even then, her glands show no signs of going down.
So I had a basic gynecological checkup before leaving to make sure there were no other problems. And that visit to the gynecologist was key. They did an external ultrasound of my uterus and then started to move the machine up into my abdomen. But I said, "What are you doing? What's this got to do with anything?" "No, because you're moving up." They said, But is there something you haven't told us, some illness you haven't mentioned? Well, no, my doctor is following me, but it's a matter that's already been closed. I had this episode, but I already believe that the issue has almost been closed. They tell me, look, I think you should have another checkup because of your lymphatic system. That is, you're full of glands that are not the right size.
Valentina finds it hard to fear something serious. She's 30 years old, living a healthy and careful life. She practices yoga, eats well, and avoids excess. She also has no history of serious illnesses in her family. On the day of the results, she arrives at the hospital as she would for any other appointment. Once inside, she presents her health card to the automatic machine that distributes tickets with the instructions, the floor, the clinic, and the order of the call. That morning, however, something happens that immediately catches her eye. 2 tickets came out of that machine, not just one. Valentina knows she has only made one appointment with the tropical diseases department, and that detail starts to worry her. When it is her turn, she enters to the office and sits down. In front of her is the same doctor who saw her at her previous appointments, a very young woman who she recognizes immediately, and thus begins the interview.
She says to me, Valentina, you have now planned a trip, a move, a change of life. So, she says, listen, and right now, unfortunately, you don't have. Imagine that you have neither a past nor a future. You only have a present, she tells me. And in this present, there is a serious illness. I say no. I cannot. I don't understand. There is a blood disease. We still have to define the parameters, but it is a tumor. She tells me, do you know what the second ticket you have in your hand is? She tells me it's the 4th floor in oncology. Your next appointment is in 2 hours on the 4th floor. But please, she says to me, if I could close the door and walk you out, the thing I would most like to do in the world right now is to be with you, because you cannot be alone for these 2 hours waiting for your appointment in oncology. Please, in front of me, do call a friend to come and be with you, because right now you cannot go through this alone.
I remember very well the first time I met Valentina, because I remember a girl who was 30 years old at the time, tall, thin, very pretty. She came into the office with her bicycle, and I said, "Where are you going with your bicycle? I'm afraid it would be stolen."
That was Dr. Anna Gaia, a hematologist at the Barcelona hospital, who would now be treating Valentina and following her throughout her medical history.
I remember that everything was very blurry. I saw people passing by and there was movement. A pink elephant could have walked past me. It was the same thing, really.
It's also true that sometimes not many questions come up during the first visit. The questions come up later because you're in shock, and you also have to give this whole process some space, right? Each person needs their own time, and it's different for everyone. And well, you have to adapt a little, right? What she had was follicular lymphoma. This is a low-grade, indolent lymphoma that does not always need to be treated from the outset. And in fact, that was the case with her. She did not need treatment at first, but she needed close monitoring.
Valentina has received her diagnosis very early on, at a time when treatment isn't yet required. This means she can take a breath for a moment. It's a strange situation knowing you are sick but having no clinical symptoms. Valentina starts traveling again, both for pleasure and for work. Europe, the United States, and of course Brazil, always under medical supervision. She also takes care of her family.
My mother already had Parkinson's disease. My father, he didn't know whether to be proud of me or desperate.
Her condition starts quickly deteriorating, one of those cruel twists of fate, just after her mother's condition also worsened.
In a few months, I think in 2 months, I went from stage 1 to stage 4. This first sharp decline manifested itself like this fatigue in the glands, always accompanied by a constant feeling. Here they don't say you feel dizzy, because it's not just dizziness, it's a feeling that you're not focused, you can't do anything, like when you're on a boat at sea.
Throughout this series, we have already seen how important it is to be around loved ones in these situations. Caregivers are the people who help and assist those in need. However, Valentina lives in Barcelona, where she has chosen to receive treatment. Meanwhile, her family is in Veneto, in Italy, with another person, her mother, who also needs assistance. In this case, it's her network of friends that provides the support she needs. Friendships such as that with Alvise, a yoga teacher who recalls the moment he learned about Valentina's diagnosis.
Valentina came from her experience as a Venetian nomad, just like me. We were sitting in a small room in my old yoga center.
I called him and said, "Look, Alvise, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I need to share it. This moment, this new beginning, and maybe I can lean on you in some way. I don't know, but I need you to know." And I was going to start treatment, I don't know, next week or the day after. So what did he do? He shaved his head. We have a beautiful photo with both our heads shaved as a sign of our journey together.
Alvise and Valentina's other friends in Barcelona are there when she starts her first chemotherapy treatment. It is a standard treatment which doesn't garner the desired results.
E infatti ha risposto.
And in fact, she responded to it. She responded and had a complete response to the disease. And then we started what we call maintenance treatment. Normally, it's an easy treatment, but in her case, it wasn't. She didn't tolerate it well. It was very difficult for her on a personal level the whole time. She had fever, discomforts, and other issues. And we didn't actually complete the 2 years, the 12 doses of treatment. And we stopped at 10, because Anna told me I can't take it anymore. It seems more than reasonable to me, considering that she was in complete remission from the disease, that her tolerance was very poor, and that she had already received more than enough doses.
It devastated me so much that after the last treatment, I showed up screaming that I couldn't take it anymore, that I wanted to give up everything, screaming, it's over, enough, I'm leaving. Bye, I'm going to go live in nature and let the tumor eat me or whatever.
The medical team then decides to change strategy, resuming therapy, but with a different protocol.
Our intention was to do this treatment and then consolidate the response with an autologous transplant, an autotransplant, a transplant of our own cells. And that's where we were. We wanted to do 4 cycles of treatment and the transplant. But after the 3rd cycle, things started to get complicated.
Then comes the year 2020, and at this point, Valentina's story touches on that of all of us, because it's the time of COVID, of the pandemic, of the lockdowns. If you remember, COVID did not affect everyone in the same way. Certain groups in the population were more vulnerable than others, including cancer patients like Valentina. She was one of the first people to fall ill with COVID in Barcelona.
The first COVID case we had in the hospital and in Catalonia was on March 13. Valentina was admitted on March 20 or 22. It was very early on, with all the fears about COVID, everything we knew. Now we don't pay much attention to COVID anymore, but at the beginning it was much more complicated.
I perfectly remember the panic in the eyes of the nurses who look at you and don't know what to do, don't know how to help you, try everything. Desperate. They were desperate. Desperation.
COVID was truly one of the hardest moments of my entire life, because Valentina fell ill at a time when all the oncologists were dying. During lockdown, I had permission to ride my bike through Barcelona. Every day I made her bread, which we called cloud bread because I used a flour called cloud flour. I made her bread, I made her meals. And I would leave it outside the ward, and then the nurses would collect it. And I would stand under her window and we would say hello on the phone.
It is undoubtedly one of the worst moments. Valentina is hospitalized, obviously in isolation. She is not intubated, but to breathe properly, she is attached to a mask connected to a respirator. The acute symptoms of COVID merge with and amplify those of the tumor.
I remember the moment when I really wanted to leave, but really wanted to. I said, that's it. Okay, not really. I'm exhausted. I can't take it anymore. I'm not fighting anymore. Enough. Because I don't know anymore if I pull myself out of COVID, but then there's still the cancer, and if I save myself from cancer, then I won't save myself from COVID. If the cancer affects COVID, that's enough.
They told me she was ill, that she was getting worse, etc. And I said, listen, when she dies, can I at least see the body? Can you show it to me? And they told me that in these cases it can be arranged. So I said, maybe it's worth letting me see her alive, and then we can talk about it, right? Always a bit half-jokingly, of course, with the doctor who was very willing to talk to me. And from that sentence came the possibility of seeing her, so it was incredible. As fate would have it, from that moment on, the next day, 2 days later, I don't remember now, there was a recovery process due to the medical care that Valentina received. So this was a really beautiful moment, a very beautiful moment.
COVID passes, Valentina recovers, but the disease has profound consequences. Direct consequences on her health and her tumor, because the worsening of her general conditions due to COVID has cancelled Valentina's chances of proceeding with the autologous transplant. Then there are also the deep wounds unrelated to the clinic, because Valentina's father also fell ill with COVID and did not survive. It is a dramatic moment, but there is also a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel.
When the news came that she could have the CAR-T therapy, it was really good news. We knew that it was a fairly experimental treatment at the time. Then the way this treatment is done is also very powerful, very invasive, even psychologically.
Valentina is considered eligible for the experimental treatment CAR-T therapy, pronounced simply as CART in Spanish.
They show this to me and say that I am a case. I am eligible to receive this type of treatment, and because there still have to be cases with very specific requirements in terms of age, they had tried various treatments at a certain stage of the disease, etc., etc. And they had not been able to receive a bone marrow transplant, and so on. It's a treatment that's still being tested. There aren't many cases that have been treated, and it involves cell reprogramming, which is like resetting the immune system, and some cells are reprogrammed to specifically attack the diseased cells.
CAR-T is a therapy that uses the patient's T lymphocyte cells of the immune system. They are taken from the blood and genetically modified in the laboratory to recognize a protein present in cancer cells. Once reinfused into the patient, the modified lymphocytes selectively identify and attack the cancer cells.
First, we administered a mild chemotherapy, which is simply to cleanse the bone marrow so that the new lymphocytes can enter. It is not a curative chemotherapy, but rather a way to prepare the body for the CAR-T cells.
It's not a light treatment, because it actually involves reprogramming the immune system and exposes the patients to various side effects, as well as being physically demanding. There are risks of infection because the immune system has to recover and does not return to function properly right away. The first few days after infusions are particularly dangerous, as even a minor infection can have serious and unpredictable consequences.
The treatment lasted about a month, which was really short. Then there is the observation of the effect of the cart. The most important thing is the following months, the following weeks.
We took her in, we accompanied her, we brought her home when she had the CAR-T. She needed people around 24 hours a day. We would take turns among ourselves, and she told me, "It's no use, if necessary, I'll die here alone." And I said, "Well, then I'll keep you company until you die, then we'll talk about it again."
The first week is the most delicate. In fact, you're in isolation as if you'd had a bone marrow transplant, and you're under observation, undergoing tests, examinations, and so on. Then, I don't know, I'm just guessing it's a week, but I remember that the first 10 days were like that, then 2 weeks. Then they send you home, but you're always accompanied for 2 months. And after 2 months, after 3 months maybe, you can start going out on the street, but don't get too excited.
CAR-T therapies are a fairly recent therapy, personalized for each patient. They have only been in use for a few years, and so far have been administered mainly for the treatment of blood cancers, lymphomas, leukemia, and myelomas. The latest experimental results are given hope for the possible use in solid tumors, at least in some cases. When it comes to these issues and new therapies, caution is key. However, in the case of CAR-T, a certain amount of optimism is justified, as the research figures and clinical statistics speaks for themselves. There is a clear improvement in patients' conditions and life expectancy. However, it is not always a definitive solution. As for Valentina, the protagonist of our episode, it has now been 6 years since her CAR-T treatment. This is how she describes her current situation.
Clinically excellent. That is, in a sense that I am not. In theory, I still have CAR-T active in me, which is something I still don't fully understand because there are few examples, few cases that came before me and had the same positive result. So they are witnesses, testimonials of what could be now, but they cannot tell me.
She has resumed her life and started traveling again.
I'm traveling more by land. I like it better. I like it. Traveling by van, I sleep where I arrive and stay nearby. I like to feel things.
The second season of The Science of You is a Cora Media podcast, supported by the European Partnership for Personalized Medicine, coordinated by Fondazione Toscana Life Sciences, and co-funded by the European Union's Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Programme. The podcast is hosted by me, Giulia Bassetto, and written by Simone Clemente. The editorial curation is by Graziano Nani. Post-production and sound design are done by Matteo Zullo. The project manager is Anna Maria Renda. The producer is Martina Conte. Post-production coordination is by Matteo Scelsa. The graphic project is by Rebecca Grassi.